Hi, everybody. This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles Stories of the Supernatural. And I hope you enjoy this new show, whether you're viewing it on the internet or listening to a podcast version of the episode. I do want to thank you for being part of my audience. You can also find links to videos or podcasts on MiamiGhostChronicles.com, as well as where you can submit your story about any eerie experiences you've had, which I would love to hear about. Just go to the Submit Your Story tab. Please subscribe to our channel so that you receive notification of when we release a new show. And find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. This is where I usually live stream and where I give you a behind-the-scenes look at locations where new episodes are being filmed at. I also tell you about all the interesting guests that will be appearing soon on Stories of the Supernatural. I hope you enjoy the show, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi, everybody. It's Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles Stories of the Supernatural. How's everybody doing? Good, I hope. I don't know if you guys can hear this, but I've got my birds. I've got my cockatiels out there, and I've got some babies that just came out, and man, they're driving me crazy. All they want is food, and hoping this doesn't carry out. But you guys are used to it anyway, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, in case you hear any weird screeching, no, it's nothing paranormal, supernatural, nothing like that. It's just my cockatiels. Hello. But anyway, guys, let me tell you about who I've got here today. I've got a gentleman by the name of Josh Hurd. Now, Josh is an author, a speaker, a filmmaker, and host of the Conversations in the Dark and the Ectoplasm show. And ever since he was young, he had an interest for all things paranormal. And it wasn't until he was in college and found a group of like-minded people that he began to investigate the things that go bump in the night. Now, he had a terrifying experience which inspired him to write his first book entitled When Ghost Hunting Goes Wrong, A Brush with Evil. And we're going to be talking about that most definitely. Now, he went on to write many more books on the topic of the paranormal, and he went on to produce and direct 2 feature-length films, as well as many other documentaries. He's also the co-owner of Malvern Manor in Malvern, Iowa, and where he gives tours, does historical research, and puts on events. So let me bring him on. How are you doing today, Josh?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
No, on the contrary, it is my pleasure. Well, Josh, even though your bio, it says that you had an interest since you were young, I'm still going to ask you, I ask everybody, did you have an experience, or what was it that prompted you to go into the paranormal even now as an adult? What happened?
Yeah, I did. It's interesting how it all kind of falls into place, and I've completely stopped believing in coincidence, and I think all of this is kind of like meant to be in some very odd way. But yeah, so when I was I remember always getting books and things like that from the library, scary stories and all that fun stuff. But it wasn't until I was probably 11, 12 years old.
Okay.
I had an uncle who was basically like my best friend in the whole world. He passed away of AIDS, and he was only 31 years old at the time. So, quite young. Mm-hmm. This was a big shock to the family, blah, blah, blah. But there were some very odd things that were going on, kind of surrounding his death. And the first one that I always tell people is his dying moment. It was interesting. He passed away in Los Angeles.
Okay.
So obviously I wasn't present for that, but my grandfather, his father, was. And so, Grandpa was kind of sitting around the table just a couple days after his passing and kind of telling us this story of what happened. And apparently my uncle had woken up and kind of sat up in bed, and everybody just kind of rushed around him. Everybody knew this was the final stages of AIDS. We knew what was happening, what was about to go down.
Okay.
But it was interesting because apparently my Uncle Todd looked past everybody, everybody that was around his bed. It was almost as if he was acknowledging something that wasn't privy to everyone else in that room.
Wow.
And he let out, like, he had this very big smile on his face. And then he closed his eyes and he quite literally expired right then and there. It was almost like he saw something,
Right.
knew exactly what was about to happen, and then passed away. Very interesting, these deathbed type stories that we hear, and there are thousands of them out there.
Yes.
But it wasn't until when my grandfather was telling us all this story, we were all sitting around this dining room table, and he was telling this story, and it was right then like this old toy radio comes tumbling down the stairs and into the room right where we were sitting, slides onto the floor, and it starts playing the song Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
Oh.
Which is so interesting because it's like that was, number one, that was like one of Uncle Todd's favorite songs ever. Number two, that was one of the songs that was played at his funeral service at UCLA.
Wow.
Very, very, very interesting. But that moment right there for me, like everybody around that table was just completely stunned. Everybody looked at one another. We all kind of like smiled in this shocked way. Nobody said a word, but everybody just lost it. We all knew.
Bet.
It was like him, just coming and saying, everything's okay, guys. I'm still here, but, I'm not here,
Right.
but I am here. Very interesting to me. So that was my moment right there. That was
Right.
it for me. That was when I started, 11 years old, which is kind of odd to think about, diving into the works of parapsychology and, Hans Holzer and Ed and Lorraine Warren and reading all of these case files on anything to do with the paranormal. Like, I was absolutely obsessed, probably to an unhealthy degree now in retrospect here.
Well,
But yeah, so, I mean, that was my moment for me.
that's very understandable though, because and this is what I tell everybody as far as, paranormal investigations, or even if you're not investigating, let's say a lot of people have experiences when they're kids or young, not because they're doing this, but there's something that happens to you when you have that firsthand experience where everything
Yeah.
kind of shifts, your reality shifts for you because you realize, okay, you can't explain it.
Right.
Like what you just described that happened with your uncle is so significant. You couldn't really interpret it any other way except that this was
Right.
him saying, I'm okay, like you said. And for you, I imagine as a kid, I would probably be impressed. And I don't blame you that you were like, I need to learn more about this.
Yeah,
Be-
exactly. Like that was for me knowing that there is something else beyond what we know. There is something else that we cannot quite fathom yet. But, our life or whatever, something does go on.
Right.
Something transfers forward. It was just, again, it was terrifying. It was heartbreaking, and it was fascinating all at the exact same time.
Right.
I
One of the
love
things
that.
I imagine is that also when you start reading, you realize there's other people that have had very similar experiences that you're like,
Yes, exactly.
wow.
And
Exactly.
that was one thing that going into this more and more, and like, when Steve Jobs passed away, he had a very similar experience. Apparently, he had sat up in his bed and he just kept saying, "Oh wow, oh wow,"
Yeah.
like he was looking around the room, like, "Oh my gosh, wow!" And then he passed away. It's like, what the hell are you seeing? Like, what are you looking at?
Well,
What can't we
exactly.
see? I love it.
And I had a paranormal investigator here that she's a hospice nurse. You know how these
Oh
we
wow,
all
yeah,
have and she told me, she goes, Marlene, I've had some patients that sometimes I've had them for a couple of years. I've been working with them or treating them. She goes, and I already know when they're going to pass. I said, how do you know that? She goes,
yeah.
because since I'm familiar with them, they will start talking to or about seeing relatives that have passed away. And she says, because I
It's
am
amazing.
familiar with them and the family up to a point, I know that who
Sure.
they're talking about is a deceased person. And she says, and sure
Wow.
enough, she says, once I see this happen with them, I know that's going to be very soon that they're going to be passing away. Very similar to what you
Just
described. It's just
amazing.
nobody sees it except them. And usually it's very
Just
joyful.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So,
And
and,
see,
and
it's things like that that make me believe that, yes, something does continue on. Now, I mean, of course, modern science or what have you, is going to try to explain everything away.
well,
And that's fine and dandy. I mean, that's its purpose. We need to debunk and all this stuff. So they'll tell us that, it's brain,
right.
it's misfiring or what
Yeah,
have you.
that if
different
right, and
things
I
aren't
know
quite connecting.
that they've done these tests, where if they press, like if they say they open your skull and they press certain parts of your brain, it
Sure,
gives you the
yeah.
same, it reproduces that near-death experience. But at the same
Exactly.
time, they say they've had people with near-death experiences. How do you account for them being able to tell what's going on in other rooms that
Bingo.
they can't see over here? I don't care what part of your brain is being affected. How would you know that? So, yeah, absolutely.
And it's things like that keep this conversation and this narrative going. Is experiences like that. It's like, how were you able to see what the doctors were saying, what they were doing to you, like working on you on an operating table? What it's just amazing
exactly.
stuff.
Or that your family is in the hallway or in a waiting room far off,
Right.
Where you possibly couldn't even overhear what's being said.
Right.
And you're able to describe the conversations that took place.
Just
So,
amazing
and I think
stuff. I love it.
a lot of doctors, and I've run across this. Nurses are more open about it. A lot of doctors, because they're still, I want to say,
Yeah.
they kind of have a little bit of stigma attached to anybody talking about that. But if you catch them in a moment by themselves, like off the record kind of thing, they will admit they've had experiences with patients with things that they can't account for, either near death or people when they're about to die. That they themselves will be like, yeah, I'm not going to talk about this in front of the other doctors, but
it's things like that fascinate me too, because even here at Malvern Manor, we have a ton of people, like doctors especially, that will come in here because they are so curious
right.
About the afterlife, because they've had similar experiences with patients. Now, obviously, they're always like, "Well, I was never here."
Right. Yeah, I know that.
But yeah, they think it would be like career suicide or whatever.
Right.
But,
Yeah. It's like, yeah, my wife or my husband, whoever, forced me to take this tour. Darn it. Okay.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yes, I know exactly. Because I've seen that yeah, even though it's gotten a lot better, because when you see work like Dr. Moody's, well, he was like the one that first started doing that near-death experience book and things, but still there's a lot of like the naysayers, and I think sometimes those are the ones that most want to be convinced.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
they're the ones that I buddy up next to on an investigation. You know,
because when they get that moment. It's like,
I want to experience it with them.
Of course. And now let me ask you, okay, so you went on, you did what I think it's so many of us do, which is you start off as a kid, you read all these books, and like you said back then, it was only Hans Holzer, and it wasn't like it is now.
Yeah.
And then what happened? You started a group after you got older? You started a ghost hunting group?
Yeah, so it wasn't until I was in college then.
Okay.
That I found all these people that had similar questions, had a lot of very similar experiences, like when they were younger. And we all decided, hey, we should try to, pursue this in some way, shape, or form, investigate this.
Okay.
And, at that time, this really cool show called Ghost Hunters just hit the airwaves, right?
Yes, I remember when that came out.
And it was interesting because I was like, wow, these dudes are plumbers, and they have an interest in the paranormal, but they are actively pursuing what we can't answer. And I enjoyed that. I'm like, so, we watched like 4 episodes of Ghost Hunters, and by God, we knew everything there was to know.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. I know. I remember those first shows. It was like, hey, everyday Joes that are plumbers by day and by night.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, so enthralled with all of this. And so we go out to this place. Of course, around Halloween time is when these haunted places get the most press. And being in this college town that we were in Northwest Missouri, there was this place. It's called Workman's Chapel. And if you look at Workman's Chapel, it resembles like a barn. It looks like an old rundown barn. So you have a very wide opening in the front.
Okay.
You have 3 windows on either side, and you have 2 windows in the back, and it is just a single room. That's it. But they ran the story on Workman's Chapel, and I was like, guys, we need to cruise out there. The first 3 nights, we were hearing footsteps, we were hearing knocking and things of that nature. But I mean, we weren't really spooked or anything like that. Nothing to really write home about, so to speak. But then the 4th consecutive night that we were out there, for whatever reason, the 4th night seems to kind of be the charm. We were out there, and we had not even set foot inside of this chapel. It was a very brightly lit night as far as the moonlight was concerned. You can see through the structure. You can see the haze of the town in the background. And there are holes, and, I mean, the place is literally falling apart.
Okay.
And on this particular night, you could not see inside of this chapel. You could not see through it. You couldn't even see 2 inches inside, which obviously was something that ghost hunters hadn't covered yet. So
yeah,
I was
exactly.
completely dumbfounded, right, by all of this. Now I'm looking in, and I'm like, guys, something doesn't feel right. Now I am about as psychic as a blade of grass. Okay, I'm not at all, and so. But I did have a weird feeling about this, and I'm just like, nothing is really sitting right about this. And so I said, why don't we just kind of take this experience, commit it to memory, and call it a night. And that was that. And my friend Tiffany was crouched down, similar to like a catcher in baseball. She was looking very intense inside the chapel. And like she was commenting on the fact, I can't believe how black it is. And she no more than got that sentence out of her mouth before she was struck by something, a force of some sort that quite literally, if you imagine yourself sitting in a chair and your legs extending out from you and your arms extending out, like you're making a 90-degree angle with your body.
Okay.
And she's flying backwards through the air, 2 to 3 feet probably. She lands on her butt.
Okay.
She does 2 backward somersaults and lies face down in the gravel. Like, this was very, very forceful, whatever this was.
You must have all been like, what?
Absolutely shocked. We grabbed her. We drug her to the car. Everybody basically, like I said, we hadn't even set foot inside that chapel.
Okay.
We took off. We headed back to campus. Now, I will say this. Tiffany was a straight A student. Of everybody in that group, probably the strongest in faith out of all of us.
Okay.
I will say she had a very, very bubbly and just a great, amazing person.
Okay.
She did not leave her dorm room for an entire week.
Wow.
She never ate a single meal. There was a lot of things just completely out of character with her. Now, ultimately, this whole thing, took the work of a priest to rectify this situation. It was absolutely horrible. But that was, it was that experience with her and, that really set me on a completely different path as far as the paranormal was concerned. Now, I will say that after all of that happened, and she was better and yada, yada.
Right.
I switched colleges. I went to a college here in Iowa.
Okay.
Very similar situation. I started a group of buddies, and I was telling them the story, basically what I just told you. And they obviously were like, dude, we want to go. And I'm like, no. I think you missed the point of the story, right? So and they're like, no, we want to check it out. And I'm like, well, peer pressure being what it is, obviously I agreed. And it was almost identical type of situation. So the first 3 nights, nothing. The fourth consecutive night that we're down there, again, we experienced the blackness. Now, this time, obviously, we didn't leave.
Okay.
But we did decide, and this is also kind of like set the standard for me as well, even to this day of how I investigate. I want to push it as far as I can, because I feel that the concrete answers that we are searching for lie just beyond our comfort zone, right? So
Sure.
I want to push it as much as I possibly can to see what happens. So we decide as a group, we're going to push it. And we are going to go inside of this chapel one at a time. Isolation, right? Complete isolation. Now, the rest of us would be outside of this chapel. We would be able to, hear everything that's going on, because we certainly could not see what the heck was going on. Now
I'm gonna ask you something real quick, Josh. Was it all guys? Yeah. Was this all guys, or did you have any girls in there?
This particular time was all guys.
That's what I thought. Okay, keep going.
Yep. This particular time was all guys. Otherwise, you are absolutely correct. There would be a voice of reason in there somewhere.
Some girl would have said, "Are you crazy? What are you doing? Didn't you hear the story he said earlier?" Yeah,
I would
that's exactly
totally agree with that.
Okay, so everybody was gonna be. It was like a test of courage. Next, you go in there now.
Basically, yes, exactly.
Oh,
so I mean, just 10 minutes by yourself, whatever. And really, we're hearing things, sure. Now, we're hearing what sounds like pacing, footsteps, heavy footfalls on wood planks. And it sounds almost like boots, like cowboy boots, right? And it's very loud pacing. And it would stop and turn. And, I mean, it was very bizarre. At one point, it sounded like log chain being pulled around the chapel. It sounded like floorboards were being ripped up.
Wow.
But nothing, I mean, those really loud snapping sounds of wood.
Okay.
Nothing was out of place, Very interesting. So my friend Blake is the last to go. Now, my friend Blake is military man, absolutely zero BS, always has been.
Okay.
But regardless, Blake's the last one to cruise in there. Blake, thank God, is holding a digital recorder, or excuse me, it was one of those mini cassette type of recorders.
I know which one you're talking
about. So he's holding that, and he's not asking questions. He just has it rolling, basically. But you're hearing all this stuff go down, and then you hear Blake say, "I want to leave," and that you hear, obviously nobody heard this at the time, but it was what we consider an EVP on this recorder, and it just says, "You're dead."
Oh, what? Did he hear it, or nobody?
No, he did not. Nobody heard it. It was very interesting. Now, you hear one footstep basically heading towards the door, and that's Blake wanting to just leave, right? So his intention is to walk out of this building.
Right.
And then you hear a very nasty sound. You hear what sounds like a whoosh, like a very loud, violent whoosh. You hear a god-awful choking sound, and the sound is actually my friend Blake being pulled out the window directly behind him by his hoodie.
What?
He's being basically choked. Now, I'm telling you, it was almost as if it was like a Hollywood style. Like, this was bad news. So ultimately, Blake was fine, thank God. Now, he had some cuts and some scrapes, obviously, but other than that, he was fine. Now, mentally, we're all screwed because it's that's the moment for me that it's like that's what still wakes me up in the middle of the night. 3 times, 4 times a week, I will wake up screaming.
Because it's like, okay, this one, even if I wanted, how do you explain that? There is no way to explain it.
Exactly. It was stupid. It was one of those things where you're questioning literally your own sanity because you can't believe what is going on. You're dumbfounded. You're completely just lost. Now, obviously, we got in the car. We got the hell out of there.
Yeah, I
what,
was gonna.
what we ended up doing. But that was it for me. That's what inspired me to write the book, When Ghost Hunting Goes Wrong, right? And it's basically just...
Who was the first one that heard that tape recording? Was it you, Josh? Were you the one that...
That was... Yes. It was me and my buddy Nate were listening to this the following morning. We got up and we just started listening to everything because we're like, what the heck happened last night? What was that? We're trying to make sense of everything. But yeah, I mean, very interesting stuff. We heard that and then obviously had to replay it over and over and over again.
That is astounding.
But that's what, yeah. But I mean, like, for just therapy and therapeutic reasons, like, I had to write this book. I'm not a writer,
right.
like, at all. I'm not.
To get it out.
But I felt like I just needed to push it out there, right? Well, then we got some people, some buddies from California who happen to be filmmakers.
Okay.
They're like, we should turn this into a documentary film. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. And so they're like, well, if it was your documentary, what would you do? I'm like, well, here's the deal. I would retell the book, right? I would retell the story.
Okay.
I go, but then maybe I would take it a few steps farther, and I would get that team, that last group of guys together, and we would go back, and we would stand up to this thing for one last time, 4 consecutive nights, just like before, actively pulling out all the stops and trying to elicit a response of some sort, but ultimately telling it, this is it for us. Screw you, F off, we're done, But, that's ultimately what happened with the film, except, obviously, again, like, I am such a butthead. I'm just realizing this now. Like, I'm such an ass. But anyway, like, again, like, I have my buddies, and, again, I'm making them now do isolation sessions inside of the cabin.
Oh, my God.
Now, we have every angle of this place completely wired with infrared cameras, digital recorders, things of that nature. So we're going to hear every squeak and crack and everything. But we're also going to be able to see our friends if they're in trouble,
right?
And be able to help them. So 1 hour per person alone inside the chapel. 1 hour?
Oh.
1 whole hour. Now, in this hour, they are not allowed to have a flashlight. They are not allowed a cell phone. They're not allowed any form of communication whatsoever. It was terrible. Now, I was the first one to do it because everybody was like, you're out of your mind. And I'm like, well, I'll be the first to go. Like, just to get the ball rolling here. Right? It was ridiculous.
Let me ask you something. Did you ever identify what was there?
The priest did.
A what?
The priest from when Tiffany was in trouble. When I reached out to the priest, he was able to basically tell me, he goes, it's not a demon.
Okay.
He goes, as everybody's going to think, it's
right.
not something necessarily demonic.
He
goes, however.
What was it, non-human or human?
Non-human,
okay.
for sure. But it was what he described it as an imp.
As a what?
Which is interesting, like an imp.
Okay,
IMP.
okay. I understand.
Which is something that I hadn't heard of.
Yeah.
Before.
I have.
But the way he described it was almost like a right-hand man to a demon.
Yes.
Just kind of a peon, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was interesting to me. So he says, whatever it is tied to the land. It is tied somehow to that location or the land or the grounds or what have you.
Okay.
Now, there was a lot of things that were kind of shady that did happen back on that property.
Okay.
People were hung out there for, claims of witchcraft and things of that nature.
Oh.
I'm telling you, like, the history is bizarre when you really dig into it. Now, obviously, you look online and people will be like, oh, there was a pastor at one time who went crazy and he killed 4 members of the congregation and then hung himself from the rafters. I can't find that anywhere.
Okay. And something like that would have made the paper. So you would have found some type of...
Very much so. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But I can find the lynchings. I can find the hangings. I can find all of this other nasty It's kind of like humanity at its worst.
Right.
And it definitely was alive and well
So
on that piece
what
of land.
at some point they just abandoned it as a
Yeah.
church and it just stood there.
Yep. Yep. So basically in the 1950s, it kind of fell into disuse,
Okay.
right? It was still used every once in a while, family gatherings and whatnot, whatever. I mean, there's a cemetery that's not even 10 feet away from the place, and it's more of a family type cemetery. So they would still go out there. They would still have services every once in a while, funeral services,
Right.
primarily. But yeah, I mean, basically in the 50s is when it just stopped,
Okay.
and just started to decay into what
Right.
it is now. So very interesting piece of property. But obviously now, no matter how much I try, like that's the one location I always want to go back to, always. But that's also the one location I can never allow myself to go back to. I'm done with it. I'm over it, But yeah, pretty
And
interesting how location.
Why do you say that?
Us.
You think you were just lucky those couple of times and you're thinking, one of these days I want to go back there and
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Well, no. I mean, one of two things happens usually. One, I mean, obviously you had enough proof that something was horrible,
Right.
and based on what that priest told you, that right there is. Or did something ever start happening at your home? Because that's what a lot of people don't realize when you start getting involved in some of these things. That
Right. And that's it. So as far as like that time period, I was in college and, had the roommates and a collective floor of people. So there was always stuff going on. So
I know where you're going with that.
Yeah. So there was never, like quiet time. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I know.
there was
You're
never
okay.
time to
Yeah, I
just
forgot
sit
about
and
that.
be
You're in
free.
college. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, very interesting stuff though, for sure. But I mean, ultimately, that's why I wanted to do then the book and the film. And from that point on, like I just got bit by a bug, and I was like, oh God, I got to write more. Oh God, I got to film more. Oh God, I got to do all this other crap.
Yeah.
So very cool stuff.
But
though.
you know what? I'm glad you did like you said, because I'm really big into research myself, and a lot of times a lot of these places they get these reputations and a lot of these urban myths
Right.
which are like what you said, but then when you really start doing the digging, there's more really truly disturbing stuff that did happen that you're like, who cares about the urban myth? The real stuff is horrible.
It's like, yeah, the real life story is even more terrifying than
Right.
anything else. It's just bizarre to me how some of this stuff, it's just like how word of mouth can just spread
Sure.
like wildfire,
Sure.
It's just amazing to me.
Do you think that anybody, let's say after the church wasn't there, obviously, or it wasn't being used as a church, do you think anybody ever went in there? Because I know sometimes these become hotspots for people to do rituals and stuff like that.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because, yeah, so that place did become kind of the place to go. If you were a high school student and wanted to kind of escape reality for a while, you could go out there, you could drink your beer, you could make out with your girlfriend or boyfriend, you could do, smoke whatever you wanted out there.
Right.
And pretty much be left alone. Pretty interesting. But yeah, a lot of stuff. And I will say this, like walking into the chapel, especially in the film, you'll notice it also that there is a very large, there's a very large circle on the ground or on the floor itself that had been spray painted on.
Okay.
There's some very weird archaic type symbols around it. Kind of resembling a clock, but definitely nothing numerical or anything that we would recognize as language or words.
Right.
But it was interesting because then there was also like candles placed at these marks. The point of this, like it had in the middle of the circle, it had this triangle.
Okay.
And then inside the triangle had what we call the Eye of Providence, or the all-seeing eye, or whatever.
Right.
And it was pointing due north. So somebody was practicing something out there.
Yeah.
And whoever was doing it had done their homework, I will say that. What it was that they were practicing, I don't quite know. I don't know if I wanted to know, but But
Well,
yeah, interesting.
you know why I say that? Because everybody thinks, yeah, like, oh, people going in there doing rituals, but a lot of times these teenagers, not the ones no, that decide, oh, we're going to do something. They get a hold of these
Right.
books and they're going to summon something or invoke something, and
Yep.
every once in a while, they don't know what they're doing, but they actually do open a doorway. They do bring something through. Okay. Unwittingly, they don't know
Exactly.
what they're doing, and unfortunately, that's sometimes where you get a lot of these dark, very non-human entities at certain locations like that, because you have somebody that's
Right.
dabbling, and even dabblers sometimes just do the right thing. You
Yep.
know?
Yeah, it could be completely like just sheer dumb luck, and
Yeah,
yet
exactly,
they're doing
exactly.
it.
Sheer love,
Yep.
and then anybody. But let me tell you something, because I was gonna say those two incidents that you described with your friends, that
Hmm. Yeah.
you the my understanding is when you see something like that has so much force to be able to do what you described,
Yeah.
you're talking usually a
Move a
non-human
human. Yeah.
entity.
Exactly. Like absolutely terrifying. It's almost like we have like this weird form of like paranormal PTSD, right?
Yeah.
So, I
Yes,
mean,
I
it's
understand totally.
it's something that you never ever will forget. Um, yeah, terrible. Ultimately, terrible.
Well,
Um,
yeah, but one of and I tell her, that's one of the things when you are into paranormal work. Like I said, usually some groups, after a little while, they if they gel and they stay together. I said a good portion of your investigations sometimes are really boring. Either one, nothing's there, or two, it just doesn't, nothing happens. You know what I'm talking about? You're there, and it's just like,
right.
okay, I'm gonna fall asleep, and then you'll get maybe a residual or an intelligent haunting. But then every once in a while, you do stumble across something really dark and
Exactly.
manipulative and malevolent.
Yeah,
And
and I just think it was so stupid that it was basically, like for all intents and purposes, like our first real investigation, and we stumble across something that's so rare and so nasty. Like, I don't know if it was something that was meant to happen. Like I don't really
right,
believe in the coincidence thing
mm-hmm.
anymore. So it just kind of makes you wonder if I was just like destined to walk this path, right? It's weird.
Of course, and also, you know what? You could have had these experience, and you could have said, you know what? Screw the ghost hunting stuff. I
Yep,
never want to
exactly.
do this again. That's
Yep.
it. And I've heard of people
And I
that's
was
happened to
so
people
close.
want to be
Yeah.
ghost hunters. It's like, yeah, they have that
And I
one
was so close
experience.
to that point. Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, nope. Now, like for Tiffany, for example,
Mm-hmm.
um, that was absolutely her. She was 100% done.
Oh yeah.
Everybody from that first group
Mm-hmm.
100% denied doing any or having any part of this film. They
Yeah.
would not and did not want a thing to do with it.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't blame them.
Sure.
I
Absolutely.
can't blame them.
Absolutely. When you're
Um,
talking that you had to get it resolved by bringing in a
right.
priest
Yeah,
and
exactly. That's terrible.
everybody, depending on their age, they had flashbacks of The Exorcist, because everybody goes in that direction, always like,
Yep.
holy. But, um, yeah, it's sometimes it does happen. You come across things that are very dark. So you continued you continued on with your group and the documentaries,
Yes.
and I see
Yes.
that you also have the Malvern Manor, which is supposed to be haunted itself, right?
Right. So the Malvern Manor, which is interesting in and of itself too. So when
Okay.
we were filming the first night of A Brush with Evil,
Okay.
and I was slated to be at this really cool place in Malvern, Iowa. It's called the Classic Cafe, and it has a slew of its own paranormal happenings and goings on. And they were nice enough to say, "Come on in and investigate for the
Okay.
purpose of your film." I wanted to open up the film basically with a ghost hunt. This is who we are. This is kind of how we do it. A very broad stroke version of an investigation
Okay.
to kind of lead into everything. And obviously, when we got there, I didn't realize that there was a bar that's attached to the Classic Cafe. And so
Okay.
with noise contamination and loud
Forget
music,
it.
it was an impossibility. Yeah.
Forget it. Yeah.
So I walk outside, I walk outside and I'm kind of smoking my angry cigarette, is what I call it, and I'm trying to come up with Plan B because, for as far as I can see, night one of filming is completely screwed.
Yeah.
And I met this guy who.
Oh, Josh, if you can hear me, I cannot hear you. Oh, don't tell me that I lost you. Oh, thank God. Okay, I thought I had lost you.
That was bizarre. That was so bizarre.
Isn't it? Isn't it? Okay.
Oh my God! Like I'm standing inside the damn house right now. Like.
All right, here you go. Dun, 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 dun.
Weird.
Okay, go ahead. Yes.
Oh, okay.
What did you say about not believing in coincidences? Oh, don't tell me I lost you again. Oh, crap. Here we go again, folks.
You know?
Oh, my God. I was going to say here, it's paranormal sabotage time. Oh, okay.
Oh, my God. Yes, it's happening right now.
Yes. But, okay, so we're going to... That's it. White light. Okay. So you're here, like you said, having your angry cigarette thinking, that's it. What do I do now? Plan B is going to be?
And I meet this guy. And he's like, oh, this is really cool what you guys are doing. I own a place that has some creepy things that go on. I'm like, oh, really? And he's like, yeah, it's, he goes, the building itself is 10,000 square feet. It used to be a hotel. He goes, then it was switched into like a nursing home type setting. And then from there is more what we would consider a group home for mentally handicapped people. And he said, there's a lot of weird things that go on there. And I said, well, where is this place? And he goes, oh, it's just right across the street. And I was absolutely blown away by that.
Wow.
He was nice enough to let us in. So quite literally, it's of a brush with evil is us discovering this monstrosity of a building that we would very soon come to call Malvern Manor. Which then... again, coincidence or whatever would have it that this gentleman had to leave town. He got a new job offer and put the place up for sale. I was lucky enough to kind of swoop in, and here I am. Like, I now own the damn place.
Talk about, being at the right place at the right time.
Yeah, exactly. Super bizarre. So... there's all of that fun stuff.
And when,
like I said,
what happened when you went there long? Obviously before you thought you were going to end up owning it. What was he describing that was happening there?
Well, he had said that he had tried to live here for 6 months.
Okay.
He had lived inside of the structure for about 6 months. Couldn't really sleep. Very odd things were happening. It sounded like the place was basically like being ransacked, is what it sounded like. A lot of times, he did call the police, things of that nature. They had to come and, check the building to make sure nothing was going on. And nothing ever was. And nothing was ever out of place either. And from the sound of it, it sounded like windows should have been broken and, things should have been all over the floor. But nothing was ever out of place.
Wow, yes.
Things like that.
That phenomenon is so common sometimes where people describe exactly
isn't it weird?
that.
And I hate it because it happens all the time here.
Oh, well, and so you're still experiencing that, huh?
Yes, absolutely. Especially up in the attic. Like whatever's up in the attic does not enjoy the company of people at all.
Okay.
And we'll absolutely let you know.
Wow.
Very interesting. So yeah, what's fascinating about this is then I start to try to put together this crossword puzzle, right? Like I'm a history major anyway.
Okay.
So history and all that fun stuff, it fascinates me. And being able to stand in a location where all this history went down is, again, just amazing.
Sure.
So, like I said, it was a hotel back in the late 1800s. This was pretty much the place to be in town.
Okay.
Weddings have been held here. Funerals have been held here. They used to bring in once a month like psychics, and they would do like these big group readings and things of that nature. Doctors would come in and out of this place on a monthly basis to kind of check out whoever needed checked out. I mean, just amazing stuff. But we do know that then this place in the 1950s became what we would consider like a nursing home.
Okay.
In the nursing home or whatever, we know it did not last very long. In the 70s, the state of Iowa came in. They said, your hallways aren't quite wide enough to properly transport patients.
Okay.
And so this is where it becomes the group home. Now, the group home is the most fascinating portion of history, in my opinion, just because the clientele.
Okay.
You have people here from the 70s all the way up until it closed in 2005, but you have a clientele of people with very common type diseases, people like with Down syndrome, for example, right? You have people that were here with very classic cases of addiction, drugs, alcohol, things of that nature. But then on the opposite side,
I was going to say that's a pretty wide swath of people.
Right. But now you have people with multiple personalities, or DID,
What?
I believe is what they call it now. You have people with schizophrenia. You have people that have murdered others in the past.
God.
This is a very odd population of people coexisting.
Let me tell you something, though. That's
together.
that's the two extremes. I mean, what?
Exactly. Very much so. You never hear of this, ever. And
no.
It's just something that is so bizarre to me. But now, here's where it gets super weird. The place only closed in 2005.
Okay.
It wasn't that long ago, and all of this was still happening. Like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Wow.
So the clientele itself is the most fascinating to me, for sure. But now, ultimately, this place was closed down. It was shut down by the state, and the reasons why is a laundry list of reasons why. The top of the list would include neglect and abuse. There was a lot of things that did happen here that I don't necessarily like to talk about. I know a lot of people around town don't like to talk about, but it happened. It happened.
It does. It does. It does. It does. Yeah,
exactly.
And I totally understand that. Yeah, because of the population that it houses there, a lot of times they're short on staff, and the staff they do have is not the best. So yeah.
Exactly. There's just so many different variables that go into all of this.
Yeah.
So yeah, just interesting stuff. So yeah,
but that you're absolutely right. Considering still the original layer, I'm sure these last 30 years or something that it was the group home.
Yes.
Yes. And it makes you wonder how much these people experienced, and nobody would pay attention to them or poo-pooed them because they were like.
It's so funny, because one of my first things of business, my first item of business basically as an owner, is I wanted to get some of the original staff members here.
Okay.
I wanted them to walk me through this building, foot by foot, and tell me whose room was this, or what was right here, or whatever happened here.
Right.
Just walk me down memory lane, you know what I mean? And I was just be sitting here taking notes and recording every second of this. And trying to take it all in. And that was one of the first things I did. Now, here's where it gets fascinating, because I started to run into a couple snags. I talked to a lot of people around town.
Okay.
And I worked here, and I was getting 30 to 40 conflicting accounts of different things.
Really?
And it was so frustrating. Yes. It was so frustrating to me. So I ended up hiring a private detective. He did a 3-week-long investigation.
Okay.
I am definitely in the wrong business. We spent stupid amounts of money on this man.
He's like, I need to get my PI license.
But it's interesting, because I instructed him. I'm like, I don't want to know a thing that you find until it's done.
Okay.
I want you to dig up everything that you can, whether it be good, bad, or otherwise. I want to know as much as you could possibly get.
Okay.
And he agreed. We still have blood stains up in the one of our hallways.
Wow.
And it's just smeared all up and down the hallway everywhere. And it's quite blatantly obvious, finger marks and spit up and things like that. Now, these are all things that I haven't touched. The building is exactly the way I found it
Okay.
when I stumbled in here about 4 years ago.
Okay.
We haven't moved anything really. So, but it was pretty interesting, some of the things that he was able to find. So
you
using
were
his
thinking after
report,
you interviewed all these people, you said, I know the truth is somewhere in the middle of all of these
yeah,
stories.
exactly,
Somewhere in there.
exactly. Yeah, and so I used the stuff that could correlate. I used all the stuff that it was, provable. I had
Okay.
documentation coming out the yin yang. Now, obviously, I don't present the documentation because, number one, it's a HIPAA violation, right?
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, this was, and
And
let's
number
face it,
two,
these,
yeah,
these people
yeah,
are still
but
alive. Some of them, I imagine. So.
exactly, yes. And a lot of these people, still have family that is very much
Sure.
in this area, and I don't want to step on their toes either.
Sure. That's understandable.
It's like all I want to do is just record, observe, and document as much as possible, and try to, again, put together this puzzle, which has been just an amazing ride, so far. But I don't see an
what,
end
Josh?
to it anytime soon.
You brought up something really interesting. A lot of people think
Mm-hmm.
because everybody hears about these abuse that the aggressors are usually maybe, you get some staff member. You'd be surprised. A lot
Right.
of the violence comes from the people, the patients or the clients that are
Correct.
there, especially
Correct.
when you're talking about somebody who's got addiction problems or MPD,
Yep.
multiple personality, and something triggers them. They can be really aggressive, like homicidal in some instances. So
Very
yeah,
much so.
I'm
You
sure
know,
a
there
lot of
was
things
one
went
that-
on there.
Oh, there was, an absolute ton. Now, when I give a tour over here, it usually takes about a half hour to get through the whole building and to, tell some of the more significant stories and things like that. The things that I can prove.
Right.
That's a big thing, too. I don't want to present people with horse crap.
Right.
I don't want to church it up. I want to present exactly what we know, and then I want
Sure.
to see if they can come up with whatever they can come up with. So it's been such a crazy ride, though.
Well, I imagine, though, that place sounds like, I mean, even if you wouldn't have told me anything, I could tell you that place must be a hotbed of activity. Okay? Just not based
sure.
on not just based on the length of time that it's been there, but number one, it was a hotel. Yep.
Right.
I don't know what there is
Right.
about hotels.
I know. It's something very weird and almost romantic about the idea of travel. But people, you think of just the clientele coming and going
Yes.
at all times for different forms of business, no matter what it was.
But you
or
know
whatever.
what? A
But,
lot
yeah.
of times, everybody thinks sometimes hotels, like you said, travel. But there's a lot of people that would end up in hotels, but things are going on in their lives which were kind of horrible. And you would think, well, something happened to them. Why would they stay at the hotel? You'd be surprised. There's people ended up in hotels sometimes for really disagreeable reasons. Yeah.
Right.
So
It's super interesting. So I've been, very good buddies with Johnny Hauser from the Villisca Axe Murder House.
okay.
So him and I, we talk all the time. And, the Villisca Axe murders, they happened in 1910.
Okay.
Obviously, the murderer or whatever was never captured. We still have no idea who did this horrific crime. But Villisca is only about 30 minutes away from here.
Okay.
The only way to get would be through rail travel,
Okay.
But at that time, it's, very, I don't know. One of the main theories is that the killer probably stayed in a hotel before coming to Villisca and then doing the nasty deed. It is bizarre. He's like, it's quite feasible that the killer stayed within these walls just a night or two before that happened. And I'm like,
Sure.
God, if we only had a ledger,
Exactly, because
of people that stayed here, my God, could you imagine?
well, because think about it. You're talking 1910. I'm sure that these towns were it was maybe one of, if any other hotels in that area. Let's say, for example, it's not like a big city.
There was one other, but didn't come into existence until a few years later.
Okay,
but
so there you go. The only place would have been your
Right.
location. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
very
we're talking
feasible.
literally. This place was the fourth structure that was constructed within this town. This building. It was the place to be. Very interesting, though.
Yes, that you know
Like
what
the whole
that
place,
that
you know.
theory is very very plausible, because you know,
Right.
and that's the thing that's always been about the that axe murder was it was a very small town, but nobody could account for
Yeah.
what happened to the perpetrator. How could they so quick?
Exactly. How could they do this? Yes, exactly. Go in
And
and just brutally murder 8 people and then just
yes,
get away scot-free? The
right.
heck, man?
They had I know they had a lot of
Just
theories
bizarre.
and a lot of you know suspects and everything,
Hmm.
but at the end of the day, nobody.
Yeah.
And but so God, that's something to think about. But anyway, getting back to that, I know that this got to be. First of all, it was a hotel. Then it was a nursing home.
Yeah.
Even though a nursing home, like you said, for a short period of time, I'm sure you might have had people that passed away there or lived there.
Very
And
much so.
group homes, same thing. I'm sure that there were people, this you know, considering
Yeah.
the amount of years that it was open, people had to have lived and passed away, and who
Very
thought
much
of
so.
this place as their home. You know, this is
Yeah, and
where they
that's what I
lived.
keep coming back to.
Right.
Like,
Okay.
there has to be, like an antecedent for activity, right? There has to be
Yes.
some form of antecedent or why something would happen. And the
Yes.
only thing that I can keep coming back to is what you just hit on. Like, this place was home, no
Yes.
matter what. Like,
Yes.
no matter if you got along with the dude across the hall
No.
or not, you're still eating your dinner pretty much the
Yes.
same time. You're getting up at
Yes.
around the same time. You are interacting daily. Because
Yes.
it's a family at that point.
Yes.
This
Absolutely.
was your home.
Yeah.
And God, I just got goosebumps just like
Right. Well,
like,
no. You know what? And the truth is,
but
all
that's
these
it.
places are run on schedule. So you're absolutely right. They probably had a time,
Yes,
you know, for this, for dinner, for lunch, for this, and like you said, I'm sure that there was conflict. But this was home. This is where they.
exactly.
And let me ask you: have you had any residual experiences, like smells or anything like that, while you're there?
The biggest residual that
Mm-hmm.
is here, and it's so bizarre to me, but it's a phenomenon that we just call the shadow man. So the shadow man is all the way down in what we call the nursing home wing. This was the wing that was added onto this building in 1956 to accommodate this nursing home setting.
Okay.
But we do know that wing was also used during the group home as well. This gentleman was a nonverbal patient. He was 6'7" tall. He was
What?
mentally deranged as hell. He had killed 3 people in the past. Like, this was a gentleman that they didn't even assist him putting on his shoes. Now, what's
Okay.
interesting,
Let me ask you: how did this guy? Why wasn't he like in a hospital for the criminally insane? I know this is a stupid question,
bingo.
but what was
Nope,
he doing
it's
there?
not. Because there were so many different cases here that I said these patients could have been better serviced elsewhere.
Let me tell
Not saying anything bad necessarily about this facility here, but I am saying
Sure.
that this is not the place for them at all. Super weird to me.
Can
But
you
now,
imagine being the
here's where it gets
staff
super
that had to
weird.
deal with him and be like, "Oh, your turn. No, your
Bingo.
turn."
They were they were terrified.
I bet.
Absolutely terrified. Now, here's the phenomenon that we are experiencing. So when people go back to the nursing home wing, they are usually sometimes greeted by a very tall, black shadow figure that will in a room all the way down the hall. You have a good 40 feet all the way down the hall.
Wow.
And so now it's 40 feet on either side. So basically you're dealing with 80, feet basically.
Right.
But what they see is a very tall, black humanoid figure come out of room number 2.
Okay.
It will turn, and then it will charge at you.
What?
Now, in the distance of this 40 feet, it is traveling in less than a second. It is moving that fast. This is obviously what is sending people out the door.
I was about to
myself
say,
included.
when you hear him
Yes.
screaming coming out, you go, "Oh, I know what they saw."
Yeah, exactly. Bizarre. Now, where it gets fascinating is we cannot, because it seems like nobody's getting hit or scratched or punched or any of that crap. Like, it's just bizarre. The second you flinch, it's over. It's done.
Wow.
And it is past. Now, where it gets funny is the fact that when this gentleman who occupied room 2 was
Right.
alive and well,
Okay.
his little claim to fame is he would come out of that room whenever they were doing bed checks or rounds or what have you. He would come out of that room and chase who was ever doing the documenting.
Oh, boy.
I'm like, very interesting. We're seeing similar behaviors
Yes.
with the Shadow Man as this gentleman's behavior was in
Yes.
life.
Yes.
Kind of coincidence? I don't know. What I do know is that to me seems very residual in nature. Here's the problem. We cannot pinpoint a specific time of day or night. What the hell was that? Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
But we can't pinpoint even a moon phase or a weather pattern or anything when this phenomenon is going down. It just happens, and it happens at all times. It doesn't seem to matter.
Wow.
It's just interesting to me.
Did you
Very
did you ever
interesting.
find out what became of him? Did did he die there?
Here's where it gets funny. So this gentleman one night decided it was a good idea. Remember, he's nonverbal. He cannot speak.
Okay.
So he can't tell you he's mad. He can just basically show you. And he's
Yeah.
upset. One night he thought it was a good idea. He waltzes down the hallway and he just walks right out the front door.
What?
He
Oh,
walks.
no.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no.
Absolutely. He walks right out the front door. Now, obviously, staff saw this happen. They were trying to get him back into the facility. They were not successful at all, and he was not compliant. So protocol at that time would say you then call the police. So the police were called. They came because this gentleman was, at that point now, he was scaring the hell out of a lot of people around town, too.
Okay.
So at that point, it's crucial that he gets, put somewhere.
Right.
So the police did come. They did, quote unquote, arrest him. But they put him in the back of the vehicle. Now, they didn't bring him back here. They took him to Omaha, Nebraska, which is just about 45 minutes away from here.
Okay.
He was taken to another facility. Within 48 hours of being admitted into that locked facility, this gentleman had expired. He had passed away.
Wow.
I don't understand the circumstances. Yeah, and we don't have any record whatsoever of what officially happened to this gentleman. Now, he was only in his mid to late 40s. He was not an old gentleman at all.
Right, exactly.
Definitely too young to just be checking out, what I mean?
Yes.
So there's something odd going on with that. So he did not die here, but he did die just 2 days after, leaving here or walking out of here.
So home is there.
So-
Home was there. Home was there.
Right. Again, yeah. That's just what I just keep coming back to. Yeah. It's just so amazing to me.
That, wow, makes you wonder what happened to that guy.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and it's like I have so many stories that are just like that, it's like
Yeah, and it's like, again, like you said,
hell?
and let's face it, back, when was this, during the 50s or whatever, sometimes you went into some of these mental institutions and something happened with certain, and especially if they didn't have any family, things happened and nobody was like, nobody's telling, he died. Too bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We had a lady that was admitted in here, and she was only in her 30s. She was quite young.
Okay.
But her husband was the one that admitted her because she had this thing going on where she said, my husband doesn't love me. He doesn't find me attractive, blah, 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 blah. Like, this became an obsession for her. She was then admitted, because he didn't know what to do anymore.
Okay.
He was completely, I don't even know what to do.
Right.
He felt terrible about it.
Okay.
We do know that she would stand at her mirror in her bathroom and she would pluck the hair out of her head one by one by one.
Wow.
And then, she was medicated, and then she was heavily medicated, and she literally just deteriorated.
I bet.
Like, it's such a sad story.
Yes.
It's so sad.
Yes.
But it's like, and we just have a ton of these. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
I could
No,
talk
it
for
sounds
days
like based on
about
what
all
who
this
you were
stuff.
telling me was admitted there, it's like you've got.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've got phenomena going on there. It's like that's
And it just
incredible.
doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter a time of day. It just happens, you know. So when people come here to have an overnight investigation, you know, it's 10,000 square feet. It's a lot of house,
That's a
you know,
lot.
to cover.
Yes.
Yeah, and you know, especially in just a night or whatever. So I mean, when people come here and they check in at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and they have the place until noon the following day. You know, so
Okay.
we give
Yeah.
them 20 hours
That's a lot.
to yeah, I mean, they could even sleep if they wanted to, you know, or if they can.
Yes.
I mean, good luck to you, but I mean, you know,
And
but
do
the
you?
option is there.
What about what's up in the attic? Because you mentioned that, and that's intriguing. Do you
hmm
think it's one of the ex-patients, or what's up there?
I would say yes, but I call it almost like peacocking.
Okay.
Whoever is up there wants people to believe that it's more than what it
Okay.
is.
All right.
So we hear a lot of banging and scratching, and again, like it sounds like, you know, the floorboards are being ripped up and things are
Okay.
getting thrown and nothing's ever out of place.
Okay.
What's interesting is, like, I thought initially it was probably an animal because it's an old building. It's very
Okay.
feasible, you know, an animal
Yeah.
would be in there.
That makes
I've
sense.
been back in this weird little crawl space area that's back in there, which is where the majority of the activity comes from, the voices and the sounds. So I've been back there now 7 separate times, specifically looking for carcass or droppings or anything
Right.
that would suggest something is or was alive.
Uh-huh.
The only things that I have found back in this little crawl space area are very personal items, like old keys, playing cards, crushed up packs of cigarettes, tobacco pouches, cans of beer, things of that
Okay.
nature, but nothing that would suggest an animal.
Okay.
Now, I will say this, usually when people are up there, they're good for about 20 to 30 minutes before they begin
Okay.
to feel physically sick. We've had plenty of people, you know, toss their cookies up there,
Really?
which makes for a super fantastic day for me.
Yeah, I
um,
bet. It's like, please,
where
at
it
the
gets
first signs
interesting,
of
yeah, it's so
like,
gross.
so I was,
It's
I
so gross.
so they, wow, physical symptoms. That's incredible.
Yes. Now, here's where it gets fascinating. This is why I say it's probably somebody, because this person will tell you to, you know, F off or leave or do
Right.
whatever and get you back
Okay.
down those stairs. But he will beg you for alcohol and cigarettes, which is like classic addictive behavior,
Yes.
right? So
Yes. Yes.
he's like, he wants, so up there in the attic, if you guys ever come and visit, like you will see,
Yes.
I have an entire collection of beer cans, whiskey bottles, cigarettes that I've left up there as more of a peace offering, right?
So let me.
Like,
So in other words, that attic is one of those. Is it one of those attics where you can stand up in? As was it ever used as a living space, or was it
you know,
just always an attic?
there is, we don't know. We
Okay.
don't know what the attic was ever used for. I will say there's paint, there's trim, there's baseboards, there's moldings.
Okay.
So I would suggest it did have some form of purpose.
Right. Okay.
Just what that purpose was, we are unsure at this
Right.
point.
Beyond storing, junk, which is what everybody usually sometimes does with their attics.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You're
So
short on
crazy.
space.
Yeah.
Put 'em up
throw
there.
it up there. Yeah. Why not?
Go up there. Go up there. Yeah. That mean old codger drunk guy. Yeah. Put him up there.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And for all you know, or
Love it.
maybe it could have been, maybe they had a handyman that lived, one of these guys that was like,
Yep.
hey, he takes care of the place. He keeps the stuff, but he's got a bad temper and he drinks. But okay, well, he lives there on the
Yes. There you
grounds.
go.
It could be that. I mean,
That's a
we
great
could
sign.
take that
Absolutely.
in a lot of different directions. But I'm sure so many personalities, so many things have gone through there
Right.
through the years. So, Josh, do you live close by? Have you ever had anything, I'm going to ask, follow you home?
You know, it's weird, but yeah, like, I mean, it does seem, and it's become a constant lately. When people are here, and sometimes they'll reach out to me, and they'll be like, things are going on here. I'm like, well, that's interesting because things are happening here at my own house as well, pretty
Okay.
much in tandem. And I
Okay.
live about 10 minutes away.
All right.
So not that far, but, far enough.
Right.
it's,
Right.
it's weird to me, like
Yeah.
how this can kind of transfer, I guess. I don't know.
Well, you're the guy in
Could you just kind of
charge.
follow us along? Right, right.
You're the guy in charge. So
So I'm the guy to mess with is what
yeah,
it is.
exactly. Or yeah, back then, think about it. They
Uh,
usually had maybe staff that took care of them, but there was always that one person in charge, and you're
yeah,
it now.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that must be
Kind of
such a
bizarre.
fascinating place to visit. It's truly
It's a lot of
fascinating.
fun. I will say that.
Well,
It's
it sounds
definitely
like
a lot of fun.
you've got a lot of sources if somebody's going in there to do an investigation as far as getting any type of evidence or capturing anything. I mean, if it's going to happen.
Right.
And I know sometimes it's not an on-demand thing. I understand the way supernatural works, but chances are in that tall guy shadow thing, what? Oh my God.
Yeah, that's not fun. No
No.
matter if it's it's not going to hit you. It's not going to do anything, but it's something about like something so large
And you know what?
coming directly at you.
I'm going to because I went up to Rolling Hills Asylum up in upstate New York, and they got
Yeah.
their tall guy, but he was a nice tall guy. He was
That's
just this
awesome.
poor kid that was dropped off, and he was really really tall, and he's supposed to be seen, but he was a
Oh,
nice tall guy, not like your guy. Your guy
yeah.
killed
We need
people.
a
That puts
we
a whole
need a
different
tall guy
slant
like
on.
that.
Well, the one up there, he was supposed to be really educated, and he was
Oh
normal
wow.
mentally. He was just had that giganticism, I guess, and his family dumped him there.
Sure.
But he was a nice person when he was alive, and he's seen or they kind of see his shadow. But your tall guy
Yeah.
that murdered people and chasing people
Yeah.
around. What?
Yeah. It's
That
just
puts
crazy. It's almost like it was a game.
Yeah, but I'm sure he
To
got a
like
kick out of
chase
scaring
people.
the poop out of the
Hmm.
staff.
Exactly, and that's what I keep thinking too. I'm like, what if this was just his game? He's just like,
Yeah.
I'm going to do this because why not? I'm going to get a rise out of somebody.
Yeah.
They're going to show me some form of attention.
Yes.
I mean, it's just There's so many different possibilities here. But
And how
my
about
God.
after hours, Josh? Do you ever have you ever had calls or things people telling you that after you've closed down and you're not there that people have seen or heard stuff?
Yes, like it's so weird, especially up in the attic. Like we have some really cool people that live around here, and the town of Malvern is so supportive of what we're doing.
Okay.
It's such an amazing situation that we've been blessed with here, seriously. But I will have some of the neighbors sometimes. They will text me or call me. They're like, hey, like, for example, this happened just a few weeks ago. He calls and he goes, hey, pal, I think you left the attic light on. Not a big deal. Just figured I'd let you know. And I go, oh, wow, thanks for that. Now, I'm very meticulous
Uh-huh.
about things, and I know for a fact that that light was off.
Right.
And then while in the conversation with him, he's like, yeah, I just thought I'd let you know. Oh, never mind, it just turned off. I
There
go,
you go.
what? Like, what?
Yeah. And you're like,
So weird.
yeah. So yeah, and I understand what you're thinking as far as I know I turned it off because the last thing I want to do is have to drive back to turn off a light. So I know I turned
screw
it
that.
off.
Let it burn. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not
well,
doing that.
it's the guy up in the attic. That's and I love it when these places you have certain entities that if you don't know them by name, you know who
Yeah.
it is, or you guess at who
exactly.
it is.
And every one of them has a name.
Oh, you do?
Every
You
one
do?
of them here has an.
Perfect.
And I absolutely, I will walk through this house and I will address them.
Yeah.
I sometimes I feel like I'm just crazy, like I'm losing my mind. It's like, hey,
I know I'm talking to thin air.
yeah, it's like, hey, Hank, I'm just in here real quick. I'm going to vacuum your floors and I'll be out of your hair. And
Right.
that's it.
Yeah. It's like, okay.
Head down, earphones in, and just do my thing. Just go.
Yeah, it that's the way. That sometimes that's why I'm saying. That's why I even asked you, do you have anything at home? And I didn't mean it in the bad as in malevolent. I'm just
Right,
thinking
right.
that they see you, those entities that are there, as the head guy,
Yeah,
and it's like, yeah, let's go pay him a little visit. Ah, he's okay. He got home okay. Let's go back. you know.
yeah, yeah. And that's kind of a cool thought. I like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, anyway,
That's good
Josh,
stuff.
thank you so much. It has been wonderful to speak to you. What
Yeah,
for
thank
the
you.
people that are listening to the podcast? What is your website where they can get
Sure.
information about Malvern Manor and your books?
Sure. So if they went on to joshhurd.net, they would
Okay.
be able to find a good portion, like all of my books for sure, and a good portion of my films. And the
Okay.
rest of my films are now on what's called VidiSpace, or the Haunted Space. It's the new network started by Nick Groff and Elizabeth Saint from Ghosts of Shepherdstown.
Really?
They were
Yeah.
kind
I
enough
didn't.
to.
When did this start? I wasn't aware of that. What's it called? The Haunted
Um,
Space?
the haunted dot space, if you guys check that out, like, it is super cool. Like, even like right now we've got Johnny Hauser on his way over here right now. He's going to
Okay.
do a 2-hour live investigation like he does every week. It's Johnny Hauser versus the Villisca Acus Murder House with season
Okay.
1, and then it's Johnny Hauser versus Malvern Manor is season 2 here. So
That is
that's
super interesting. I did not know that. And what are they doing? Are they hosting what people doing live or
yeah.
documentaries or
So
that is great.
So it is basically like there are radio shows on there. There are
Okay.
documentary films on there. Like, I have 4 up there right
Okay, I'm gonna
now.
check those out.
Um, it's super, super cool service that they're offering here.
Yeah.
And very, very cool stuff. But yeah, like I said, films and live shows and other shows, like just a ton of content. And it's always, always being updated.
Excellent.
They just got the deal with Amazon Fire Stick. So for
Okay,
those that
perfect.
own like a Fire Stick can get the VidiSpace app, and
Okay.
they can go on there and check out,
Absolutely.
and I
That
know my films are on there too. So yeah, go check those out.
absolutely. Again, thank you so
Hmm.
much, Josh. It has been absolutely wonderful to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
No, my pleasure, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Oh, Malvern Manor. You know what? Where had prior to this, prior to thinking of interviewing Josh, I had heard of Malvern Manor. I can't remember now because sometimes I take in so much information, shows, content that I lose track sometimes of where I see stuff at. And even then, I remember thinking, man, that place is what? But absolutely, I wasn't kidding when I said that place undoubtedly, without having gone to do an investigation, I can tell you more than likely that is a hot spot. It's got intelligent and residual, but most likely a lot of intelligent manifestations there. Again, the hotel, well, first of all, the length of time it was there. The hotel, the nursing home, people lived and died there. And it's not like a hospital where some people, especially like those last years where people will just go there a week and maybe they pass away, but they live somewhere else. These people, for the length of times, for the years that it was open, there was people there that lived probably a good portion of their lives that they passed away there. I mean, this was home for them. And there's an interesting cast of characters there, to put it mildly. We're talking here from what he's describing, people with just, God, that Down syndrome. I mean, and you put them in with somebody that's got multiple personality disorder or schizophrenic. Sometimes that's, yeah, I know that they medicate them and they give them the things they're supposed to take as far as the people that have mental illness, but I'm telling you, that must have been one crazy place. No pun intended. But yeah, absolutely, undoubtedly, there has got to be intelligent hauntings going on there. You should need to check. I'm gonna check out this new what is it, haunted dot space or spaces? I don't even know what it is. I want to check out his documentaries, absolutely his books, see what else is there. But anyway, guys, I hope you like this show. I loved talking to Josh again, paranormal researcher after my own heart. He's an author, but he's out there and he's got that first-hand experience and that first-hand proof. Like I say, when you have that moment, doesn't mean you capture anything, but you know, like what he described happened with his uncle that had passed away. It's like, if nothing else paranormal happens to me in my life, this will suffice for me to know that there is something that happens to us when we die, and that is able to come back and what he said, say, tell everybody I'm okay now. But so anyway, guys, subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified. Whether you're seeing the video on YouTube, you're catching me on podcasts on any of the podcast platforms like iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher, Podcasts, Mixcloud. I'm all over the place. Make sure that you subscribe so you get notified when I release a new show. Also catch me live streaming on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And again, my true believers, I'm waiting for your stories. I'm getting some of them. Some of them are great. And I hope you keep them coming. Like I said, I'm going to do a show eventually when I get some, some stories that I have like a common thread. I'm going to put a show together about those. I know, and I have, again, a lot of fantastic, interesting guests having to do with some aspect of the paranormal, of the supernatural. And thank you so very much again for being part of my audience and sharing this time with me. Take care.